I have this whole different sense of style now. I wear like baggy clothing just to like cover it now. And I'm also like mentally limiting myself when it comes to social groups where it's like I'm very wary to go out to like late night party. I'm very wary to go out to late night parties, outdoor events because I'm just scared like, oh, what's the worst case scenario? Like I could have a complication. My name is Ariel. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Calgary. And I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is another form of irritable bowel syndrome, in 2023. In the summer of 2023, I found myself having a lot more bowel movements, only like once or twice a day, so nothing unordinary. And then in less than a week to 2 weeks' time, it jumped up to 8 times a day and like 6 times a night. So this was during exam season, so I was very preoccupied with other things. But I visited urgent care 2 times and I actually got the wrong diagnosis a few times. And they prescribed me a high fiber diet, which with ulcerative colitis you don't want to do. And my condition got worse during my exam season, so I wasn't paying attention as much as I should have. And I eventually had to visit the the emergency department where I was almost like white and pale to be admitted. During that ER visit, it was different from a few other times where where I would be waiting for about 12, was it 12 hours? Yeah, where I've been waiting for 12 hours and then they would just do one checkup and then send me back home. And then my second ER visit, it only took about 8 hours because I was practically lifeless in a chair and white and pale until they could finally admit me because my blood pressure was too low or something along those lines. So when I was admitted to the hospital, it wasn't for like a solid week of them doing tests like a colonoscopy and other issues where I would get an official diagnosis. But for a week, it was always like, am I gonna have cancer? Am I just gonna have like severe cases of IBS? It was just really, really, really uneasy for me for that full week of not knowing what I had. Regarding the colonoscopy, I never had one before, so the steps of taking it felt a bit embarrassing because I mean IBS it has to do with stuff regarding the bottom and at 19 years old I'm not used to stuff like that and I would expect that in like my later ages, but it just felt really, really uncomfortable and almost shameful. After the full week of just not knowing what I had, the doctor finally came in and said I had irritable bowel syndrome or ulcerative colitis. And I felt huge relief because, hey, I finally have a diagnosis. I finally know what I finally know what I have. But that also came with more unfortunately concerning thoughts. Like ulcerative colitis doesn't have a known cause right now, so that was just always very annoying to me. And I had a set plan for medication. Like for the next 3 weeks, I would be trying medication to try and get into remission, but none of them would work. So for like 3 weeks following that, it was just testing medication, having being very happy at certain moments because I'll be in remission for like 14, 12 hours, and then crashing down back to having severe ulcerative colitis until like 4 weeks afterwards, where I finally got my surgery. I think over the course of the 3, 4 weeks, I'll try out 3 or 4 different medications, and I think perhaps one experimental one. The first 2 medications I took, which unfortunately I don't remember the name of, I only took them for 2 days. They did not work at all. It had zero effect, and honestly, my condition was even worsening. For like the third medication, and for the third medication, it worked for like 12 hours, and then I crashed down again, which honestly could have been like a completely separate reason for why I was getting better. And for the fourth medication, again, it just had no effect. So over the course of like 4 weeks, I would try 4 different medications, none of which would work, and my condition would just keep worsening. Like I would still dropping weight. I think I had like 4 blood transfusions, and eventually, like my health was getting so bad that we just couldn't try medications anymore, and we had to resort to surgery. The surgery I had was called an ileostomy surgery, which is a pretty invasive surgery. It's pretty simple. They just like remove the entire they remove the entire colon, and I wasn't too worried because I've been at least using online resources. There's so many online resources nowadays of people my age, people in their 30s, 20s, 50s who like had an ostomy bag, which I what I currently have. So there's so many online resources to learn what life is like after my surgery that I wasn't actually too worried, and I was looking forward to my surgery. Mostly because I was in really poor health conditions for those 4 weeks, but I was really looking forward to the surgery. For my first surgery, what it looked like the day of was, I think it happened at midnight, if I'm not so wrong. Yeah, so my first surgery happened at midnight, so I just went through a full day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Again, ulcerative colitis, so I'm still having issues and normal checkups in the hospital. But when it came to going to the operation room, I was just very, very happy going there. Like I had a huge support system. My family, mostly my mom and my brother, followed me to the operation room while they carted me there. And then, yeah, I said my goodbyes to them, and I was just like in the waiting room for the operation room. But when I was in like the waiting room, waiting for my operation for like 30 minutes to an hour, it really like crashed down on me like I'm really getting a surgery. Like none of my peers are like getting stuff done like this, and I felt like, dang, the world's kind of crashing down on me. I did not expect my life to go like this at this moment in time. So I did have a very emotional moment right before the surgery, and then I went through it. And then when I woke up, for like the first 1 or 2 days, I have very short memory because I was just recovering from that whole time. And all I remember was just going through tutorials and ostomy nurses teaching me how to deal with my new ostomy bag. Usually an ostomy bag, it's a closed bag, so you don't see what's inside it. But during your hospital stay, it's transparent, so you get like a full view of everything that's happening. And because you're straight out of surgery, it's like hugely inflamed. So my best like description of it, it kind of looks like a red slug coming out of you. And of course, that's gonna look freaky to any 19, 20-year-old who's like no, who's like used to just having a normal body up to that point. But of course, I had so many online resources. I knew what it was going to look like coming out of surgery. So when I saw it, I was actually like not bothered at all. I just knew like this is going to be life-saving for me. Like I'm going to return back to a nice quality of life, and I just have like a new partner in life now. Between my first surgery, which was the ileostomy surgery, and my second surgery was to make it permanent. Um, I had a few months time, where it's like from summer all the way to February, where I could just try and get my health reasonably back to a good level. So I actually just worked out. I just worked, or for the first 2 weeks, I was just recovering, and then I tried to work out afterwards. And luckily, I had like a huge experience with working out, so I was able to like get back to reasonable health. And I even picked up like a part-time job at a bakery, just selling stuff. So leading up to the second surgery, everything was planned out. But it was only like 2 weeks prior where my condition suddenly like started crashing. Like usually my stoma, which is like what's inside my ostomy bag, what the surgery was for, the stoma started going within my stomach, which is just not supposed to happen. Like it's supposed to stay out, and a healthy stoma is like staying out perfectly red and doing its job. Mine was retreating back into my body and almost not functioning at all. So 2 weeks prior to my planned surgery, I actually had to quit my part-time job because I was just sweating profusely. I was like deep heaving during my job. Like if you saw me, like if you looked at the cameras at my work, I was just sitting down in the corner like deep heaving while my coworkers was manning the register. So while I was in the 2 weeks leading up to my second surgery, I was just like in bed, like trying to recover from my second surgery, and I thought it would just work out. Flash forward, I get my second surgery accomplished, no complications whatsoever. But during like the 2 to 3 days recovering, that's when like my vitals kept crashing. Like I had something called a drain, and the drain is only supposed to be filled with blood, but then it was filled with like blue and green liquid. So my drain had some stool in it. And luckily, my dad found that out. My family was a huge support system once again, and he actually pointed it out to the nurse, and thankfully that alerted them, and they actually got to questioning the doctor and the surgeons about why there's stool in something that's only supposed to have blood in it. So excuse me, during my 2 to 3 days recovering from my second surgery, I I crashed and then I had to be admitted to the ICU for 2 days. So when I was in the ICU, they had to find out what was wrong. It's like they had to find out what was wrong and then they planned for an emergency surgery. And what that emergency surgery looked like is they practically had to remove, I think, more of my small intestine so that they could redo the stoma and section it properly and place it properly so it would be functioning well again, which thankfully it has. But those 2 days in the ICU were really tough, and unfortunately, it was also during my mom's birthday, so it was pretty troubling during that time. And luckily, like my the way I conducted myself through those ICU days, I know they was good. They had me on so many medications, I don't remember anything for those 2 days. But from like videos my mom sent me, from videos my family has sent me, I actually like they gave me a whiteboard because I couldn't talk due to everything they put on me. But like on the whiteboard, I have like I guess the faintest memory of doing this, but I put like random scribbles down that said happy birthday to my mom, and I was really happy that I did that. And that's like one of the proudest moments I've had from like this whole journey is like even though I'm like suffering and I'm placed in the ICU and placed on fentanyl, I was still like wishing happy birthday to my mom, still like placing my thoughts about my family before everything else. Right now, I have a permanent ostomy bag, which means I have a stoma. So having a stoma means I use the washroom differently from other people. So a stoma and an ostomy bag, what they are is that all the food that goes in me, when they come out of me, it's actually like exiting from my stomach now and emptying into a bag. So about after I eat a meal every 3 to 4 hours, I have to go to the washroom to empty out a bag instead of the normal way of eliminating stuff. So what that means in my daily life now is like, of course, I need to be conscious of where a washroom is in my day-to-day life. And mostly it's about how I conduct myself socially now. Like there's always these physical handicaps now I had because of the stoma, where like I can't lift weights like I used to. Like that's a huge part of my identity gone. It was like I was a huge weightlifter, and I was always like going for PRs, 1 rep maxes and everything. But with the stoma now, I haven't done that for like 2 years, and I've like I have to change my whole approach to working out now, and it's kind of weakened my sense of self-identity. But that's besides the point. But when it comes to like social issues and just having a bag displayed on me, it's different. Like I have this whole different sense of style now. I wear like baggy clothing just to like cover it now. And I'm also like mentally limiting myself when it comes to social groups where it's like I'm very wary to go out to like late night party, or I'm very wary to go out to late night parties, outdoor events because I'm just scared like, oh, what's the worst case scenario? Like I could have a complication, someone could accidentally strike me in the stomach and I'll be admitted to go to the hospital again. I don't want to go through this emergency surgery. I don't want to put my mom through the tough time I did when I was in the ICU. So it's like I'm like whenever a social whenever a social event happens, my first thought goes like, what if the worst case scenario happens? One of the biggest mental obstacles I've had, and unfortunately still struggle with today, is that I still imagine myself what I would have been like without the surgery. Like I would have entered university a year earlier. I would have been at my full strength. I wouldn't have lost 20 pounds, gained it, lost it again, and then gained it again. And I could have just been on a consistent like growth path instead of like up and down, up and down, up and down. I would have honestly, my social life would have been better because before I went through the surgery, I did pretty well socially. I could communicate clearly and everything like that. But after my first and second surgery, I had so much like physical health concerns, and just so much mental anguish that I like developed a stutter for like a month or two, and I was just like very cautious talking to people because I was always just like having my ostomy bag on my mind, thinking like, oh, they're gonna see this and be like very, very curious and like might see it as a negative or anything like that. So yeah, there's just these huge mental obstacles where I'm always comparing myself to what I could have been without the surgery. My message of hope is that to anyone out there listening, it's like you know there will be difficulties in your future and that there's going to be like uncontrollable variables around every corner. But there's always one thing you can control, and that's like how you conduct yourself. So be in full control of yourself, control what your strength and your abilities are right now, and live your life to the fullest no matter what uncontrollable obstacles are in your way. My advice to anybody listening and going through the same situation as myself is take your surgery and your condition as a wake-up call that I guess there's some uncontrollable things you just have to take on the chin and deal with. But it's a wake-up call to control everything in your life that you are able to control. So go for a walk, take that drink of water, spend your time wisely, and do what actions will strengthen your body, strengthen your mind, and strengthen your spirit.